Good morning and welcome to Wake Up to Broker Up with Mark, episode number 23 for 2025. So as I ponder what I'm going to talk about today on Broker Up, I have lots of things to consider, and that's because I never run out of material. And so this week I thought I would go right back to the top of the alphabet and talk about earnest money. Yep, it's a subject that unfortunately always seems to pop itself back up, and in this situation, we're going to talk about two different earnest money issues and how maybe we can combat it. And the first one is, if you're representing the seller, you really do have an obligation to pay attention to when the buyer side is supposed to deliver the earnest money to the holder. Yeah, I know a lot of times it gets outsourced to the closing attorney because maybe the closing attorney is holding earnest money. But are you, as the listing agent, protecting the seller and following up on whether or not the earnest money was actually sent to the holder and making sure it was done in a timely manner? And no offense, but I'm guessing not. Most of the time it happens, 80% of the time it happens seamlessly and nobody pays any attention to it and everything goes as planned. And then there's that other 20% of the time where it hit the fan and it's a problem. And once it's a problem, it's a really big problem. Why? Because then everybody has to be noticed, and then the buyer gets extra days to not perform, and then at some point in the future, the seller can terminate the agreement. And guess what? Seller's out the money unless they go after the buyer in court. If you're the listing agent, you got to follow up on whether or not the buyer is submitting their earnest money, especially when the buyer identifies themselves or you identify the buyer as an investor. Yeah, I don't know what that means. I've watched 3 episodes of an infomercial overnight, and now I'm an investor. And what it really comes down to is people that think they're investors and they're stringing people along until they see whether or not they want to buy it. Because I would imagine a true investor goes out there, identifies properties they want to buy, and buy them, and submit the earnest money timely, and do all the things necessary required to buy a property. And one way you can do, if you're a listing agent, to help flush out those people is give them a deadline as a special step to deposit the earnest money. And then if they don't deposit the earnest money, the agreement's null and void. Yep, you could do that as a special step. And if you need to know how, reach out to me and I'll send you some wording that will help you accomplish that on behalf of the seller. Now, on the buy side, the buyer has an obligation to turn in earnest money. And if you're representing a buyer, you got to follow that. And if they're due today, then tomorrow, if the earnest money's not there, you need to let everybody know. And I'm not just talking about letting the other side know, the listing side, but also let the brokerage know, because we may need to take more formal action to make sure we're in compliance with the purchase and sale agreement. Yeah, again, it's not a problem until it's a problem. And when it's a problem, it's a real problem. You got to make sure that you're following up on earnest money. It's a big deal, especially when it doesn't end up where it's supposed to end up. Think about it. Now, I would also like to invite you to my class on Thursday at East Cobb, A Better Way, and you'll get some more maybe tricks and tips about things you can do to make your life easier and to make your business flow smoother. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.